So, if you're anything like me, you're always thinking about what's the next thing in your life. So, when I was in kindergarten, I used to think once I got into first grade that everything would change and it would be so much better. And then when I was in first grade, I used to think, well, if I can get into fifth grade, then everything would be amazing because I would be at the best possible state that I could be in. And then when I was in fifth grade, I thought, well, once I got into high school, things are going to change. It's going to be something that's really amazing. And you get there, and then once you're in high school, you start thinking, well, if I could only be in grade 12, then once I'm in 12th grade, then everything is going to be perfect and it's going to be all settled. And then you get there, and then you get into to grade 12, and you start thinking, well, if I only get into university or college, then everything is going to be sort of put together, and I'm going to have my life put together. And then you get there, and then you think, well, once I'm done, then this is an amazing thing that I've achieved, and I could definitely get so much more of my life done at that moment. And things are going to come together. I'm going to have my life together. And then you finish your university, and you think, well, if only I get into graduate school, then everything is going to be amazing, and it's going to fit together, and life is going to come together, and it's going to be perfect. And you get there, and you get into graduate school, and you complete graduate school, and you think, well, if only I get married. And then once you get married, and then you think that, man, this is great. And then everything is put together. And then you think, well, if only I have my kids. And then you have some kids. And then you think, wow, this is great. And everything's all put together. But when you achieve each one of those things and you start looking around, you don't feel any different than when you were in first grade. You feel the exact same thing. You've accomplished a little bit. You look back and you say, well, I've actually done those things. But at this moment in time right now, I don't feel that much different than what I felt 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I still feel the same thing, and I still have all of the same emotions. And so there's a couple of things that are really important takeaways in terms of dealing with this and thinking about it. First of all, if you are running away from something or you're trying to escape something because you think that you're not perfect in any sort of way, then stop that, because you're never going to be able to escape that. You're always getting to the point that you were yesterday. You always feel the exact same thing, and you keep pushing forward, and it doesn't change. Everything is the same. The other thing that I think is very important for all of us to realize, and I have to remind myself every day, give yourself some grace. Give other people grace and say, you know what? We're all really just a bunch of 5-year-olds deep down inside. And as we're a bunch of 5-year-olds deep down inside, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to lash out on other people. We're going to feel angry. We're going to feel frustrated, just like we did when we were 5 years old. There's not a lot different between then and now. And so when we make these kind of goofy things that we would consider, man, why did I do that? Or why did that person do that to me? That was terrible for them to do that. Is to give yourself and those people some grace and realize that they're just processing things, and you're just processing things as you would then. The other thing that I want to sort of point out and discuss is that whenever you have these sort of moral judgments in your world where you're saying, well, if I do this kind of thing, then everything is going to be right. Or if I don't do this thing, then everything is going to be wrong. It doesn't work out that way. It doesn't change. And you only have one life to live. I think one of the biggest fallacies that we think about, and I think it's due to how we actually teach about different things in this world, is that we have choices in life and that we can choose one thing or the other. But that's really not the truth. We really have one life, and we're following this one life over and over and over again. And we're just tracking on this one life. And yes, there's sort of moments that you can choose to do something that is quote unquote better than another thing. But, at the end of the day, there's only one reason why you're choosing those kind of things, and that is just living life as you see it at this moment. So if you're faced with moral judgments and you're choosing between right and wrong and you're thinking about, golly, if I can only do this thing, then everything is going to be put together, then my life is going to be much more perfect. It doesn't work out that way. You never get to the moment where you feel that you are self-actualized, as some people might talk about. Just does not work out that way. You're constantly growing and bumbling along, and if you're honest with yourself, just like I am, is that you realize that you really are bumbling along and you don't really know what the secret is, whatever that secret is, and you're just kind of adapting to how the world is. And sometimes you luck out and you're put in a situation where everything is great and it sort of comes together, but those moments are very fleeting and then they disappear, and you have to think about, well, what am I going to do now that my world has fell apart? How am I going to process this, and how am I going to go forward? So as you go through these different stages and as you progress through different things, just realize that we're all human and we all make mistakes, and we only have one life to live. And those mistakes, those so-called mistakes that we have, they're not really mistakes. They're the thing that happened to us and the thing that we chose, even though that's maybe because of our circumstances that we have at that moment. And it seemed like a good choice at that moment. So if you've done anything in your past that you regret or you feel bad about, give yourself some grace. You can really use it, because there's so much more going on in this world. And that moment where you thought that you did something wrong, it's very likely that you actually didn't do anything wrong. You just did the thing that seemed natural and made sense to you. So the one thing that I can take away, that I can give you as a takeaway from watching this video, is really, really work on giving yourself grace as you're going through these different things. And to also acknowledge that we're all imperfect. We're all bumbling along. And when you get to a moment that you think you're going to be self-actualized, or it's going to be a little better than what it was in the past, yeah, there's some truth to that. There's a little bit of truth that you do improve and get better over time. But at the same time, you're no different than when you were 5 years old. You're the same person. It doesn't change. You still have the same identity, just with a little bit more bumps and bruises and strains that you didn't have before, which shape you to view the world and know that there are downsides, there are upsides sometimes. So just be yourself, be a good person, and give yourself grace whenever you go across and do things in your life. Be easy on yourself. You've got a lot more to live in the future.